stone fortresses collapsed into dust while a single custody ledger survived intact for centuries. That inversion reveals something historians often overlook. The real architecture of early justice systems was not built from walls. It was built from paperwork. When scholars examine early punishment, they focus on physical structures: dungeons, stocks, gallows, and cells. These were the visible symbols of authority. But the systems that actually sustained justice over time were administrative, not architectural. A prisoner could escape a cell. They could not escape a properly recorded custody entry. Because that record travelled. It moved between courts, between jurisdictions, and between generations of officials. It existed independently of any single building, guard, or moment. The earliest custody documents predate the prisons that supposedly defined them. 12th century English rolls describe prisoners held in structures that no longer exist. The buildings vanished. The records remained. That persistence was not accidental. It was engineered into the system from the beginning. Before confinement ever began, administration came first. When a person arrived at a holding facility, the initial act was not locking a door, it was recording information. Name, charge, arresting authority, receiving official legal justification for custody. This sequence appears repeatedly across medieval and early modern Europe. London, Paris, Florence, different cities, different legal traditions, identical logic. Documentation always preceded confinement. Without that documentation, detention had no legal meaning. A person locked in a room without a custody record was not imprisoned. They were kidnapped. The document transformed physical restraint into legal custody. It created a status that extended beyond the room, beyond the guard, and beyond the moment of arrest. Early administrators understood a fundamental truth. Physical security was temporary. Walls could be breached, guards could be bribed, doors could be forced, but a properly maintained custody chain documented across multiple registers, verified by multiple officials, and duplicated across archives created permanence. The record outlasted everything else. 14th century Italian intake registers show this clearly. Each entry documented not only the prisoner but the chain of authority itself. Who made the arrest? Which court ordered detention? Which official accepted custody? Which facility received the transfer? Every handoff recorded, every authority verified. The prisoner moved through physical space. The record moved through administrative space. The administrative system proved far more durable. This documentary logic explains architectural choices that otherwise seem strange. Early holding facilities were often located inside administrative buildings rather than fortified structures. Prisoners were held in courthouse basements, municipal towers, or attached chambers. Not because these spaces were secure, but because they were close to the records. A prisoner held beside the documentation of their custody remained legally contained even if physical escape occurred. Court coordination depended entirely on this foundation. Trials could not proceed without verified custody. Sentences could not be executed without documented authority. Appeals could not be filed without established custody chains. Missing paperwork disrupted proceedings more than missing prisoners. The system prioritized administrative continuity over physical containment. Architectural layouts reflected these priorities. Holding areas were designed to facilitate access to records. Guards needed to verify custody status constantly. Clerks needed to update logs as cases advanced. Officials needed prisoners produced according to documented schedules. Buildings optimized paperwork flow, not incarceration strength. Custody registers performed another essential function. They created institutional memory independent of individuals. Magistrates died, guards retired, officials were replaced, the records remained. Copies existed across jurisdictions. Authority persisted even as every human component changed. This administrative continuity explains why custody procedures remained stable through political collapse and reform. Dynasties fell, governments reorganized, legal codes changed, intake procedures endured. Not because they were ideologically protected, but because they were infrastructure. They solved a problem that existed regardless of who held power. How does a legal system maintain authority over time? Through documentation. Modern incarceration inherited this logic intact. Today's booking procedures follow patterns established centuries ago. Intake forms, custody chains, transfer logs. Not because reformers preserved them, but because administrative necessity demanded them. Physical detention still requires legal authority. Legal authority still requires documentation. Documentation still requires standardized processes. 19th century expansion makes this clearer. Cities built larger facilities, not because crime suddenly increased, but because courts processed more cases. Each case generated custody requirements. Each custody requirement generated paperwork. Facilities expanded to accommodate documentation as much as bodies. Architectural responses reflected this shift. Administrative wings dominated new facilities. Record rooms occupied central space. Clerk offices sat adjacent to holding areas. Buildings existed to support administrative process first, confinement second. Transfer protocols reveal the hierarchy most clearly. When prisoners moved between facilities, physical transport mattered less than documentary transfer. A prisoner arriving without proper records could not be accepted. Custody could not legally change hands until paperwork aligned. Bodies waited while documents caught up. Administrative arrival determined custody. Physical arrival meant nothing without it. This dependency drove standardization. Intake forms became uniform. Transfer procedures codified. Documentation templates crossed jurisdictions. Not through centralized design, but through necessity. Systems that shared paperwork could coordinate. Systems that did not failed. Technology changed the medium, not the structure. Digital records replaced ledgers. Databases replaced registers. Electronic transfer replaced couriers. The logic remained unchanged. Every custody event generates documentation. Documentation creates legal authority. Authority requires verification across systems. This continuity explains why incarceration systems resist change. Reform efforts encountered documentary frameworks spanning courts, facilities, and agencies. Altering one procedure affects dozens of connected processes. The resistance is not stubbornness. It is structural logic inherited from centuries of administrative development. The real foundation of incarceration was never stone. It was documentation. Facilities crumble, legal philosophies shift. Governments reorganize. Custody records persist because they solve a problem that exists in every system attempting to maintain authority over time. When modern institutions struggle to reform, they confront this inheritance. The rigidity is not moral. It is architectural, built not from walls, but from records. Medieval clerks understood something enduring. Authority that survives disruption must be written down. The paperwork outlasts the walls. Every time.